An English typewriter can assign one key to each letter. Chinese writing presents a harder mechanical question. What happens when the writing system contains thousands of commonly used characters? The answer was not a keyboard with thousands of buttons. Commercial Chinese typewriters often used a large tray filled with individual pieces of type. An operator moved a selector across the tray, found the required character, positioned the mechanism, and struck it onto paper. Typing became a combination of writing, memory, classification, and physical search. The machine could fit on a desk, but the operator had to learn where characters lived. Speed depended on arranging the tray intelligently. Frequently used characters were placed where they could be reached quickly. Characters that often appeared together could be moved near one another. A skilled typist did more than copy text. The typist continuously optimized an information system. This is why the Chinese typewriter matters beyond its unusual appearance. Historians at Stanford argue that these machines developed techniques that feel surprisingly modern, predicting which characters were likely to come next, organizing symbols by frequency, and helping a user search a vast character set all resemble problems later solved by digital input software. Mechanical typewriters never made Chinese easy to type. They were heavy, specialized, and dependent on trained operators. Electronic word processing eventually replaced trays of metal type with coded characters, keyboards, phonetic input, handwriting recognition, and prediction. The old machines became rare enough that many people assumed they had never worked at all. But they did work, in offices, newspapers, government agencies, and businesses. The Chinese typewriter was not a failed imitation of an alphabetic machine. It was a different solution to a different information problem. Its metal tray disappeared. The challenge it solved now lives inside every Chinese keyboard on a phone. That is the short version of the Chinese typewriter story. To understand why it mattered, we need to slow down and examine the entire system around it. The operator, the mechanism, the infrastructure, the economics, the social habits, the transition, the exceptions, and the legacy. Start with the human routine. A Chinese typewriter could not map one key to one character, so it turned typing into physical search across an organized field of metal type. The important comparison is not between human labor and a machine in isolation, but between two complete routines. A product earns a place in daily life when it removes decisions, interruptions, and opportunities for error as well as physical effort. Notice who begins the task, who watches it, who corrects it, and who cleans up afterward. Those quiet obligations often explain adoption better than a specification sheet. A faster mechanism can still feel slow when it repeatedly calls a person back into the process. Now look closely at the mechanism. The operator's memory of the tray was as important as the mechanism because speed came from knowing where likely characters could be found. A mechanism can appear simple after it becomes familiar, yet its design fixes a chain of choices about timing, force, feedback, and control. Those choices determine what the operator must still notice and what the product can safely decide by itself. The useful question is where judgment lives. It may sit in a lever, a gauge, a physical stop, a warning sound, or the practiced senses of the user. Later designs often look smarter because they move more of that judgment inside the product. The third layer is infrastructure. Frequently used characters and common combinations encouraged typists to rearrange the tray around real language patterns. Objects do not spread on engineering merit alone. They rely on power, communications, roads, plumbing, retail, repair, standards, or trained workers. When that supporting network changes, the same object can move from essential to inconvenient without changing its physical form. Infrastructure is easiest to notice when it is missing. Once it becomes reliable, designers can assume it exists and remove features that once compensated for uncertainty. The next generation then appears simpler only because more complexity has moved out of sight. There is also an economic question. This made a skilled operator part writer, part indexer, and part adaptive prediction system. Buyers compare more than the price on the day of purchase. They also absorb time, maintenance, supplies, training, risk, and the cost of keeping an older system alive. A replacement becomes persuasive when the total burden shifts. Even if the original product still works, that burden is distributed unevenly. The purchaser, operator, repairer, employee, and family member may each experience a different cost. A successful product can therefore win by solving the problem of the person who makes the decision, even when another person performs the work. The social meaning matters too. The machine's complexity was not evidence that Chinese could not be mechanized. It showed that alphabetic keyboard assumptions were too narrow. Everyday products signal expectations about speed, cleanliness, status, privacy, responsibility, and skill. People may accept an awkward device when it represents progress, or abandon a capable one when its rituals begin to feel out of step with ordinary life. Advertising can amplify that shift, but it does not create it alone. Friends, workplaces, shops, and public institutions teach people what normal use looks like. Once the new behavior becomes ordinary, the old routine can seem demanding even to someone who once performed it without complaint. Replacement rarely happens in a single moment. Electronic encoding separated the character from a physical piece of type and allowed one symbol to be selected through phonetic, structural, or predictive input. Old and new systems overlap while prices fall, habits adjust, and supporting services reorganize. During that interval, decline can look slow. Once the surrounding network tips toward the replacement, however, the remaining market can contract with surprising speed. This is why a date of invention rarely marks a clean beginning, and a date of discontinuation rarely marks a clean end. The useful timeline follows access, affordability, confidence, and repeated use. Those changes can lag behind the laboratory by years or decades. The surviving exceptions are revealing. Modern software still faces the same search problem but can rank possibilities instantly from context and frequency. A product that disappears from the mainstream can remain valuable in places with different constraints. Survival is evidence that design is always conditional. Convenience for one household or business may be fragility, waste, or unnecessary complexity for another. These holdouts are not simply people trapped in the past. They can be rational users optimizing for control, durability, independence, familiarity, or low operating cost. Looking at the exceptions protects the history from becoming a simple story in which every newer product is automatically better. Finally, consider the legacy. The metal tray anticipated autocomplete by treating writing as selection from a large, intelligently ordered character space. The most durable inheritance is often not the object itself but the behavior it normalized. Later products can hide the same task behind software, sensors, or a larger network, making yesterday's visible mechanism difficult to recognize inside today's routine. To find that inheritance, follow the promise rather than the shape. Ask what uncertainty the product removed, what action it made repeatable, and what expectation it taught users to carry forward. The casing may vanish while the promise becomes an invisible standard for everything that follows. Taken together, these layers explain why the Chinese typewriter was neither a foolish dead end nor an inevitable step toward the present. It was a practical answer to one historical arrangement of labor, technology, cost, and expectation. Its rise shows what people urgently needed at that moment. Its decline shows which surrounding conditions changed. And its legacy survives wherever a newer product quietly performs the same job with fewer visible steps. That is why ordinary relics deserve more than nostalgia. They reveal the hidden systems inside everyday life.